Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rochford Files. This is your host, Andrew Rochford. First off, I'd like to thank all of you for the views on my video breaking down the debate between Sam Cedar and Jackson Hinkle. A record amount of likes on that video, and in a matter of time, it'll eventually be my most viewed YouTube video. It's got about 100 more views it needs to go before it clears the previous high. And I've gained a few new subscribers, so welcome to all of you out there, and please keep clicking the subscribe button as well, in addition to giving out those likes. Now let's get into this topic. So now I'm going to finally weigh in on the Spotify and Joe Rogan issue that has started over the course of last week. And what I've noticed is with a lot of these stories, if you just wait a bit longer, then there's more uh, things that follow, and it gives you a more complete picture to paint for you as I go through this. So I'm about to go over an article that has many of the updates since this started, I believe, last Wednesday. There we go. I just jumped to a different article. So let's put that up in full. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek said on Sunday, finally, to a growing chorus of critics blaming the streamer for not doing enough to address COVID-19 misinformation, why it matters. While health experts have been sounding the alarm about the issue for weeks, it took the threat of high-profile talents for Spotify to finally admit adamant and transparent around its content policies. Details: instead of taking action on anti-vaccination content from most popular podcaster Joe Rogan, Eck doubled down in a statement on Spotify's creator expression while also vowing to be more transparent about the rules. And that's not exactly true on the part of Eck, because Caitlin Johnstone revealed on Twitter yesterday that they had removed 20,000 more examples of content over COVID since the start of the pandemic. So that is partially a lie on their part. We have had rules in place for many years, and admittedly, we hadn't been transparent around policies that guide our content more broadly. Moving forward, X said Spotify will add a content advisory to any podcast episode that contains COVID-19 discussion. He also said the company is testing new ways to highlight its rules to creators to avoid ambiguity. So this right here is like the softest form of censorship, because when you have a propagandized uh, population, then that just means that you're going to have people who see those tags come up and they won't even bother to look at the content. And a great example of that is Twitter. There's a couple lefty outlets like Sputnik, RT. They get labeled as Russian state, and the problem with that soft form of censorship is it just causes people to not even engage with the content. Eck also linked to a post on Spotify's website that listed the company's long-standing content moderation policies, which leaked to The Verge last week. The policies were previously kept from the public, ban any content suggesting the vaccines cause death, and anti-vaccination content broadly. Critics were quick to slam Spotify, arguing the statement didn't go far enough to address Rogan's anti-vaccination comments that are still available on the platform. They didn't mention Rogan by name at all. The big picture. The streamers facing a very public boycott from popular musicians and podcasters in a response to the way it handled ultimatum from Neil Young last week. Young demanded Spotify take down his music unless it took action to address the vaccine misinformation spread by Rogan, the most popular podcaster on the platform. Spotify complied, saying we regret Neil's decision to remove his music, but hope to welcome him back soon. And this is the thing that has been the change since then. Other singers and podcasters, including fellow Canadian singer Joni Mitchell and Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band member Niles Lofgren, followed suit. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who, like Rogan, have an exclusive podcast deal with Spotify, also expressed concerns on Sunday. Be smart. This level of public pressure amount misinformation typically targets bigger social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube. High-profile boycotts targeting those companies haven't typically resulted in meaningful business losses. They have created reputation crises that sometimes temporarily spook investors and advertisers. Spotify's stock is down nearly 30% since the start of the year. It hasn't faced a widespread advertising boycott, but some users have taken to Twitter to say they're canceling their subscriptions. So this overall issue is a very multi-layered one at hand. It's not going to be like a simple thing to break down because a lot of people are focused on just the individual aspects of it, whether it be like the censorship, the part of capitalism at play here, the team sport culture war, or even just pointing out the distractions. So we got to go through all of them. First off, the main issue at hand, the one that people catch on to, is the censorship, that potential that this had at the start, because you've got a lot of these liberal celebrities. Once again, the way that they respond when there's information they disagree with is to censor and hide the what they don't agree with. And that right there is the biggest problem that liberals have had, especially since the rise of Donald Trump. But the way that you address speech like this, specifically when it's not threatening, violent threats, that is you have to counter back by winning the war of ideas and have good information beat out bad information. And I know that a lot of people make the argument that since some people who have had bad battles with COVID, is that it's enough of a justification to play the censorship card. And that's just not going to work here. It just means that the battle of misinformation got lost. But the other aspect is the fact that even if you don't agree with anything throughout Joe Rogan's COVID coverage, he is trying to open up the discourse in a way that mainstream media just flat out refuses to entertain or acknowledge the idea of. And that's why Joe Rogan is the most popular podcaster in the North America. That idea is what makes him that. Well, and you wonder why so many people have developed such a mistrust towards your mainstream media. It's because pretty much all they're doing is stoking a culture war. And you got Joe Rogan, who is, for the record, someone who I do not watch very much. And he also is someone who doesn't really have a true and consistent ideology. And the only thing I can really give him credit for is he'll platform a few left voices, even if it's less compared to the amount of right wing voices he has on. It's the fact that he was still open to the progressive politician over the neoliberal or the neo fascist, as he's shown when he endorsed Bernie Sanders uh, in the 2020 primary. But what happened is liberals have done a lot to push him away. And then once Bernie Sanders' fate got sealed, then you start to see some of the left push him away as well. So that would have been a problem if potentially if Rogan got censored, just because even though he has the platform to easily get back on his feet somewhere else, that was always going to hurt regular people more in the process if that had continued. Now let's go on to the next subject at hand. It's how many of these musicians who are abandoning Spotify now, they're now pretty much just doing what your professional athlete does when they essentially just demanded to be released from their current team and leverage it to join a new team. Yes, that's right. This is just a very team sport type of aspect that you're seeing at play here. And this is the part that is just reinforcing another uh, part of capitalism is the fact that instead of having like a true freedom of open platforms, you're just seeing people manipulate these platforms a lot in the way that you see with like the way that streaming services have morphed into like about 10 or so pay platforms, which are no longer going to be a real value in comparison to if you had just had a regular cable package. And even though most of these music streaming platforms have free and premium services, that's what this thing is starting to open up into a Pandora's box of. It's a lot like when college sports, you started to see a lot of college teams realign. And this is what you're just seeing a lot of artists do now is just a bunch of realignment. But the thing is that is a lot of the people are falling for, especially the liberals who have the belief ingrained into their brain that the only way that you stop unpopular uh, discourse or information is by censoring it. They responded by uh, posting about deleting Spotify. And what that is like to me is whenever your star player leaves your favorite team, that's just effectively like burning their jersey after that happened. And that's pretty much the effect of liberals uh, posting about deleting Spotify had. So this is just another instance of your red team, blue team falling for more of the team sports aspect of politics. Then last, this is all just ultimately a big distraction that diverts your focus from the fact that it's our government who has fucked up the response to COVID. It's not Joe Rogan. It's not anyone else who you see as a divisive political personality. It's the fact that you had a president, Joe Biden, who promised to get COVID under control after Donald Trump failed to do anything to get it under control. In fact, Joe Biden has arguably done less than Donald Trump to get that shit under control. And what we've seen is countries that have a real trust for their government, like China, like Cuba, DPRK, Vietnam, and several other socialist countries, is the fact that if there's a trust with them, then you're ultimately going to work together to achieve the goal of getting the pandemic more under control. But when you're in a situation like the United States, extremely high levels of mistrust in the government, then you're just going to see this type of divide and it becoming an extreme wedge issue when what we should really be doing is demanding better, like universal health care. That's what we should really be focused on. Making sure that people can get better masks to use because most of the masks that we have now they don't help as good. And if more people had like the higher end KN95 type masks, then we would be doing more to try to slow down the spread as opposed to cloth and paper mask. So there's a lot that could be done that better than what has happened. And that's what the real issue is. But instead, people are using the bad government excuse to as a justification to go with mandates instead of demanding our government do better. Because if you just demand the mandates, then there's no fucking chance they'll ever do better. So this is why this Spotify and Joe Rogan fallout has created just another one of these type of distractions that take our eye off the ball and ultimately get us focusing on what the real issues in hand are. It's the fact that we aren't uh, holding our government accountable for what's happened. And they want you to hold random podcasters more accountable than them.